Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. We're awaiting remarks from President Trump. He's at the winter meeting of the Republican National Committee. The president is scheduled to start speaking at 8:10 tonight from the Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C. You're looking at pictures of it right there. Of course, we'll take you live when he does. But first, Washington has been in near limbo all day, mesmerized by the promise that the now famous House Intelligence Committee memo will be released at any moment, any second. We don't know when, it turns out. At this point, all we know for certain about the memo is that it's 4 pages long. It was compiled by Intel Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, and as of tonight remains classified and hidden from public view. According to some who have read it, the memo exposes shocking misconduct by our intelligence and law enforcement agencies during the 2016 election, including spying on Americans for political purposes. We can't confirm any of that. Like pretty much everyone else, we have not seen the document, but the charges are strong enough to shake public faith in some of our most important public institutions. And the only way to fix that is to release the memo so the rest of us can see the evidence and decide for ourselves what it amounts to. That's how democracies work. It seems like an obvious solution. In fact, it's the only solution. And yet, for some reason, the prospect of transparency has triggered panic in the Democratic Party and among its Praetorian Guard in the media. Just a year ago, the Washington Post, for example, adopted the pompous and yet indisputably true slogan, "Democracy dies in darkness." Just this week, that paper dismissed the congressional memo as, quote, a hyper-partisan attempt to discredit Mueller. Of course, the Post would have no way of knowing that. They haven't seen the memo. They don't want you to see it either. How did democracy dies in darkness become some things are best kept secret? It turns out that when transparency hurts Democrats, the media oppose transparency. Remember when CNN's Chris Cuomo warned viewers they would be breaking the law simply by reading John Podesta's leaked emails? Well, needless to say, most government bureaucrats agree with the media on this. As The Onion put it today, FBI warns that Republican memo could undermine faith in massive, unaccountable secret government agencies. No surprise there. Most people everywhere would rather avoid accountability if it's at all possible. The federal government's transparency caucus has always been notably small. The question is, are there legitimate reasons to oppose releasing the memo? Reasons that have nothing to do with craven media cheerleading for Democrats or with Adam Schiff's career aspirations. Only 2 legitimate reasons come to mind. Are the contents of the memo provably false and therefore libelous? And would releasing the memo imperil national security? Those are real questions, and so far the answer to both appears to be no. In other words, there is no excuse for withholding this document from the public. Claims to the contrary are partisan barking, and you ought to ignore them. Mark Stein is an author and columnist, and he joins us tonight. So, Mark, I think the best summary of the argument against this from the federal point of view came out today in The Onion, which quoted an imaginary federal official as saying, and I'm quoting, "If we take away the public's faith in this shadowy monolith, all that's left is an extensive network of rogue, unelected intelligence officers carrying out extrajudicial missions for a variety of subjective and occasionally personal reasons." And we wouldn't want that.
Exactly. And as you noted, the Washington Post has come out against the release of the memo. This is the newspaper that every couple of years Hollywood makes a movie about with Katharine Graham, the late owner, and Ben Bradley, the late editor, said, "Oh, yeah, I'll go to jail. I'll publish this, and I'm prepared to take the risk of going to jail." And Tom Hanks and gets all the looks forward to all the Oscar nominations and all the rest of it, and that every actor would kill to play the Washington Post owner who says, "I'm going to go to jail. I'm publishing the memo and I'm willing to go to jail." And then back in the real world, they say, "Oh, no, no, no. You are people out there. You don't need to know this. It could greatly imperil all our shadowy deep state bureaucracies if you were to see this memo." There's a kind of conflict there in the modern democratic.
So democracy dies in darkness, but not in this specific case. Is there, and you've covered a lot of national security stories for decades, I've read them, do you think there are legitimate reasons to withhold this memo from public view?
I don't think so, because we live in leaky times. And so far, we've had an investigation about supposed Russian government interference in the US election, for which there is very minimal evidence. Whereas in the course of the investigation, a lot of evidence has emerged about American government interference in the election, which ought to be a lot more concerning. And we have seen texts, we've seen emails, reports of meetings, phrases that are prima facie suspicious, such as insurance policy, and the idea that the whole thing is one big massive fruit of the poisonous tree being a memo that was paid for by the Democrats with input from the Russians purely for the purpose of enabling the party in government to spy on its political opponents. That's the scandal. That's why the American people are entitled to see the memo.
If this memo were not released, and I think that it will be imminently, but let's say it weren't released and the supporting documents remain cloaked under their classified status, wouldn't that abet the most destructive kind of distrust in government and conspiracy theories and exactly the kind of discourse that really does undermine a country, it seems to me? I mean, sunlight really is needed here.
Well, yes. I mean, you look at it. If you were, say, Vladimir Putin, and you wanted to interfere in America's election, what actually serves your purposes more? Trying to find a candidate who will be your stooge, or actually creating conditions where there is a paralyzed relationship between the permanent bureaucracy and the government and massive mistrust of all government institutions. I mean, in effect, the Russia investigation itself is a huge victory for Putin. And I would say one other thing here, too.
Yeah.
I would say one other thing here, too, Tucker. This investigation isn't where it ought to be right now. Mueller is on the back foot. The FBI is on the back foot. And Trump is actually teaching a lesson here. If you look at what happened to the Bush administration during that disgraceful Scooter Libby investigation a few years ago, where Bush took the high road and steered clear of it, and it was immensely damaging to him. Trump, on the other hand, is saying there is a bigger scandal here, and so far that bigger scandal is outpunching the so-called Russia investigation.
So far, that's right, and I think the memo will shine a lot of light on that in either direction. Mark Stein, thank you for that. That was interesting.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.
We're still awaiting the president's speech. It should begin at any moment. Meantime, Joe DeGenova has been around these issues for a long time. He's a former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, and he joins us in the studio tonight. Joe, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
So the first question is a topical one. There have been news reports all day that the FBI director, I don't know if these are true or not, but is threatening to resign.
I hope he does.
So what is that about? Where are these stories coming from? Are they true?
Chris Wray planted these stories himself, but he's trying to show the employees of the FBI and the former agents that he's brave, he's stalwart, he's standing up for them. This is nonsensical. If he offers to resign, the president should accept his resignation. This type of behavior by an FBI director is childish, it's immature. And let me say that since August, the Congress has been seeking the documents which are going to be revealed somewhat in the 4-page memorandum, which demonstrate the corruption on the 7th floor of the FBI and at the Department of Justice under Comey and others. It is inconceivable to me that Wray has to turn to a threat of resignation to make himself look good. It displays a lack of leadership, lack of competence, and an inability to understand the times in which you function as a major leader of an American institution. In addition, it shows an arrogance toward congressional oversight. The notion of going to the Speaker of the House and saying, Mr. Speaker, we really don't want you to publish this memo. What in the name of God is wrong at the top of the FBI?
But on what, I guess what I'm confused by, like most Americans, I'm always willing to give the benefit of the doubt to the FBI, to law enforcement, to intel agencies. It's my government.
Yes.
I don't understand the rationale. And what makes me nervous, what makes me think it might just be butt covering, is they never explain why the country would be imperiled by the release of the information.
One of the things that's terrible about this is that both Chris Wray and Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, have done a miserable job as leaders in explaining why they're doing what they're doing, why they can't do what people want them to do. You know what Chris Wray was arguing for yesterday and today? To remove the names of all the FBI agents and the DOJ people who've broken the law and are going to be revealed in the memorandum.
But on what grounds? I mean, how would the public benefit from the redaction of those names?
They wouldn't, and it's not about the public. This is the arrogance of Wray and Rosenstein. They want to protect the bureaucracy. They want to protect the bureaucracy because they think the institutions are more important than you or I knowing anything, and they think the country cannot survive without them. This is this phony notion that DOJ and the FBI are independent of the executive branch and the President of the United States. It is an insidious concept. They work for the President. He can fire them. He can tell them what to do. That doesn't mean he's going to interfere in an investigation. But the arrogance of Wray and Rosenstein to think that they can defy congressional oversight and ask the Speaker to take out the names of people that have broken the law. Well, how outrageous.
So what do you make of the argument from the left? I'm speaking now of the whole left, every red-faced talk show host and phony pundit on cable news yapping away, that to ask questions like the ones you're asking demonstrates a lack of respect for law enforcement. You don't appreciate the work they do, the risks they take. You're basically unpatriotic for wanting to know what your government is doing.
Yeah, well, let me just say this. I've been a federal prosecutor and an investigator for more than 30 years. I've had my family threatened by drug dealers and terrorists. This is nonsensical. We all respect the street agents. We respect the prosecutors at the career level of the Justice Department. What we are talking about here is criticism of political appointees at the FBI and political appointees at the Department of Justice. This has nothing to do with the street agents. The arguments of the left are phony arguments designed to make it look like people like me, who are critical of the FBI in this situation, are critical of everyone. That's nonsense.
So when Joan Walsh on CNN suggests that you're unpatriotic for asking questions about what your government is doing, you don't feel unpatriotic, is what you're saying?
No, actually, it's not a question of patriotism. As an old U.S. attorney, I don't like dirty cops. And the 7th floor of the FBI is full of them, and the upper echelon of the DOJ under Obama was full of dirty cops. And look what they did. They threw a case against Hillary Clinton like a bunch of lousy 1930s prize fighters for $500, and they tried to frame Donald Trump with a created crime.
Seems like our patriotic duty would be to untangle the mess, find out what happened.
Let's find out what happened. Let's unseal the memo.
Amen. Joe, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Stirring and true, I thought. We're still waiting on the president's remarks from the Trump Hotel here in Washington. He's scheduled to begin at any minute. And, of course, we'll bring you there as soon as he does. We'll break into the ads if we need to. That's how committed to the news we are. Stay tuned. A Fox News alert, the president about to speak at the RNC winter meeting being held at the Trump Hotel here in Washington. He'll discuss, we think, the FBI memo. We're not sure. There's a new report out, though, that there is evidence of partisan activity described in the memo. A number of new reports haven't confirmed them. Kim Strasser writes to the Wall Street Journal. She has been on this story for months, and she joins us tonight. Kim, thanks for coming on.
I'm so happy to be here, Tucker.
Thank you. So there is, and I don't mean to call you out on this because I don't know if you've seen it. It came out about 60 seconds ago. But The Hill, John Solomon at The Hill reporting that congressional Republicans will make the case that half to three-quarters of the evidence that federal law enforcement officials used to begin the investigation into Trump and his campaign came initially from partisan sources connected to Hillary Clinton. Basically, Democratic oppo was used to start this investigation. Does that sound plausible?
Yeah, it does sound plausible because, look, people need to step back when they go and look at this memo when it finally comes out. And this has been somewhat lost among all the back and forth, is what you have here is an FBI that launched a counterintelligence probe into an active presidential campaign. Now, normally the bar for that would have to be very, very high. So if we find out that, in fact, even, I'm sorry, even half of it or a third of it or a bit of it was based on partisan research from another campaign or manufactured news that came from that campaign, that is highly troubling.
So give us some perspective on this figure, Carter Page, who appears to be a central figure, more central than some of us understood in this. He was the one that FBI or that the Justice Department argued was a foreign agent, an agent of the Russian government, in order to get the FISA warrant to spy on him and the campaign. Is there any evidence at all that he was a Russian agent? What do we know about him and his connection to the Trump campaign?
Nothing so far that we know. And in fact, you know, if the reporting is to be believed, this is all based on some innuendo that was in a dossier that was created by an opposition research firm that was working for the Clinton campaign. That's where some of the accusations came from. Also, supposedly the overheard ramblings of a junior Trump campaign aide while he was drunk in London, saying something about the campaign. We have yet to be presented with any evidence that the FBI used as a basis for the probe or for the warrant, both of which enormous uses of power.
So in the subsequent year, and there's been a lot of leaking, is there any hint at all that the investigation has overturned any evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign proper and the Putin government?
No, and this is something that I think that people also need to understand. Look, the reason the House did this, they're doing an investigation of whether or not there was FISA abuse. That means, did the government abuse its power to look at a citizen? If this probe and this wiretap of Carter Page went on for months and months and months and continued to never throw up anything, that's another question of abuse, because that's a big thing, monitoring a citizen. And if you don't find anything, you shut it down. You don't use it as an excuse as a continued way to monitor a campaign.
So I wonder why there's such resistance here in Washington from the federal bureaucracy, from the Democratic Party, from the media, and from some Republicans like Lindsey Graham to getting this memo out before the public. And it might put some concerns to rest. On what grounds would they be opposing that?
Well, there are no good grounds at this point. Remember, Tucker, we've had guys like Devin Nunes and Trey Gowdy put this memo together. They care deeply about national security. You've had Chief of Staff Flynn look at it, members of the intelligence community. They have all deemed it okay to go live. So there can be only one reason, and that's because what's in this memo is damaging to certain people who are named by name in it. And I think what we're going to see come out in this is that members of the FBI were, let's say, cavalier with the truth in terms of what they told the FISA court, that they rested this entire probe on very flimsy, if any, evidence, and that they just, you know, weren't straight with some of the people they were dealing with as they tried to get very, very powerful tools to look at American citizens.
I'm confused, though. I mean, you're a working journalist. I thought the basic precept of journalism was that the public has a right to know as much as it can, realistically, about what powerful people, and particularly the government, are doing. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off there. The president is taking the stage. Kim Strassel, thank you. Here's the President of the United States.
Thank you, everybody. Wow. Well, you know, Ronna and I, we won Michigan together, so I said, I think we have to keep her. And now look at the job she's doing. What a job. Thanks, Ronna. What a job. That's true. They're setting records, but we're going to set another kind of record, and that's making our great country so great again. So much better than it ever was. Our military, our immigration situation, I think it has a chance. You know, the Democrats are AWOL. They're missing in action. We're saying, where are they? We have a proposal. We never hear from them. Because I don't think they want to solve the DACA problem. I think they want to talk about it. I think they want to obstruct. You know, the name is Resist. That's the name of their movement. Resist. That's all they do is resist. I don't know if they're good at it. They can't be too good at it because we're passing a lot of things. So I wouldn't say their resistance is extremely successful. The thing I'm most proud about, we passed the biggest, the most beautiful tax cut and reform that anybody's seen. And included in that is the individual mandate repeal. That's where you pay a fortune in order not to have to pay for health insurance. Think of that one. In other words, you go and you don't have so much because you're in this middle group, and you can't really buy health insurance or health care. So you write a big, beautiful check. You take a lot of money for the privilege of not paying, and you get nothing. Do you think that's a fair deal? We repealed it, folks. We repealed it. And Anwar, you know, I heard so much about Anwar over the years. They've been trying to get Anwar, Alaska. They've been trying to get it passed for 40 years. And I didn't think it was so big. I said, what's the big deal? And then a friend of mine called, who's in that business, energy. He said, they've been trying to pass it for 42 years. Ronald Reagan tried and failed. Everybody tried and failed. And I hear you're going to get it passed. This is just a little part of our bill. It's one of the big fines in the world, oil and gas. And as soon as I heard that, I said, I love this Anwar. This is big stuff. I love it. So it's great. But we just did anybody not see the State of the Union? Because even the haters back there gave us good reviews on that one. It's hard for them to do. They came up with fake polls. They had fake polls, but the fake polls were even good. And they said, what are we going to do? Took them a couple of hours to figure before they went negative, They got calls from the bosses. You can't say that about Trump. You can't say good. But it's been, we've had an incredible time. And just about everybody, and I recognize so many people, but just about everybody in this room has been here from the beginning of this incredible journey. And, we have a few terms. It's always going to be Make America Great Again. That's always going to be our baby. That's always going to be our baby. But we also have America First. We're putting America first. We're putting it over other countries. And I always say, because it's an arrogant statement, I say to them, you got to put your company and country.
It's President of the United States at the hotel named after him, the Trump Hotel here in Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania Avenue, speaking at the RNC meeting. Earlier he spoke to members of Congress at a retreat they have been having at the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia. Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio and Republican Congressman Steve King of Iowa were there, and they join us tonight. Thanks to both of you for coming on. I appreciate it. Congressman Jordan, I have to ask you about this memo. Where are we on that? I don't think you're in Washington, but I can tell you everyone here is expecting it's going to be released any moment. When will it be released?
Yeah.
Do you know?
I think tomorrow. Yeah, I think tomorrow, Tucker. And I always say this: never forget what we're talking about here. A secret court where the FBI goes to get a secret warrant to spy on American citizens. And tomorrow, when this memo comes out, the American people, I think, will see very clearly what the FBI told the court to get that secret warrant and what they didn't tell the court. And to me, that is critical, particularly when this all happened in the context of a campaign for the presidency of the United States. So that comes out tomorrow, and I think it's important for every single journalist like you to see it and talk about it. But more importantly, it's great. It'll be important for every single American to read what took place.
So I just want to make sure I understand you clearly. Your concern is the pretext under which they got the warrant.
All I'm saying is the memo will come out tomorrow, and it'll give some context to. Remember what goes on in a FISA court. It's a secret court where people go to get a secret warrant to spy on fellow citizens. So all I'm saying is tomorrow, this memo, I think, will give some context to what we've all been talking about. I can't talk about the memo, can't talk about names or anything like that in it. We're not allowed to until it comes out. But that's the context that I think is so critical. And in fact, we all know what we've heard from the Strzok page text messages, the bias that exists. I would argue almost the animus that existed with some of these key people at the top of the FBI. So I think tomorrow there'll be some clarification to what actually took place.
So you both have been cloistered away working. You may have missed some of the press conference, the press coverage of this. The media have been warning about the catastrophic consequences if too much transparency comes to the FBI or the workings of government. Here's part of what people have been saying. Listen to this.
You guys are going to really regret this when this is all over, Steve, because you are demonizing people who, for the most part, keep us safe. We have no evidence of any kind of
I'm not demonizing the men and women of the FBI. This is a pattern of jumping for a conclusion because it is a beautiful distraction from an investigation.
Chris.
You don't like it now, but listen to what you're saying to us.
There are dots that need to be connected along the way.
But you're saying
history will look at this and say, if we fail to connect the dots, we were naive and foolish.
Congressman King, I'm not going to ask you to respond to your own interview with Chris Cuomo on the other channel, but to the first point that you heard made at CNN, that people who ask too many questions about what their government is doing, you press too hard for answers, are unpatriotic. What's your response to that?
I think on the other side of that, it is patriotism itself and a duty to uphold our oath to support and defend the Constitution, and a duty that we have to do oversight, particularly over the FBI and the DOJ. And if we saw this evidence, and as the Select Committee on Intel has seen this evidence, if we turned our backs to that, if we turned a blind eye to that, shame on us if we trailed in the dust the integrity of this country. Somebody's got to look over their shoulder. And when the public sees, hopefully tomorrow, what's in that memo, it's not going to answer all the questions. I don't want to promise that. But it certainly asks the right ones. And it starts the path down to investigate down these rabbit trails. I think it'll be the equivalent of when the cannon went off, when the land rush began of the Oklahoma Sooners. They ran out across the prairie. I think the press, the pundits, the American people they're going to start looking back against all the little signals and evidence that we've seen over the months. They're going to have different meanings than they had when they were first analyzed. And we will have to open doors at the end of those trails so that the American people know this is earth-shaking. It's worse than Watergate. And the only thing that we don't know yet is whether does this lead all the way to a president of the United States.
So, Congressman Jordan, apparently the director of the FBI has been arguing that the names of FBI officials accused of wrongdoing ought to be redacted from the document. That seems like butt covering of the most obvious kind. Will they be redacted? Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. You do something wrong, you don't want it to be made public. I remember when I got in trouble at school, I didn't want the teacher to call my parents. So, of course. I don't want it to go public. But think about this. I mean, we go back to the Clinton investigation. We all suspected the fix was in on the Clinton investigation. Once we saw the Peter Strzok, Lisa Page text messages, we knew the fix was in on the Clinton investigation. And then those same top people, and understand there's a big difference between the top people at the FBI and the rank and file people who do a great job every single day. But those top people, those same top people who rigged the Clinton investigation, we know that from the text message where he said this is no profile on courage because she knows charges aren't going to be brought when they're talking about Attorney General Lynch. Those same people who did that are the ones who launched and ran the Trump investigation, right? So anyone with common sense will step back and say, wait a minute, maybe we better check it out. And tomorrow's memo gives even further clarification to why it's important for us to check it out and do our appropriate oversight function.
It's also third world. I mean, this country really degraded under the last administration, obviously. Congressman, thank you both very much for that. I appreciate it. Look forward to seeing that memo. Many are arguing, virtually everyone in Washington actually, still arguing against releasing that FBI memo because you have no right to know what's in it. Keep that in mind, you serf. A former Obama advisor who joins the chorus opposing its release joins us next. We'll be right back. During the State of the Union address, the president offered Democrats a deal that would give a pathway to citizenship for nearly 2 million so-called dreamers, not just to legal status, but to citizenship, voting, benefits, everything. In return, the president said he wanted measures to cut down on chain migration. That is the principle that allows immigrants in the U.S. to, over time, bring in their extended family here. Instead of taking the deal, Democrats are saying that chain migration is itself a bigoted term. Watch.
Look what they're doing with family unification, making up a fake name, chain. They like the word chain. That sends tremors through people.
I think a lot of President Trump's rhetoric is racist. When someone uses the phrase chained migration, it is intentional in trying to demonize families, literally trying to demonize families and make it a racist slur. It is not right.
Kirsten Gillibrand, by the way, is an actual sitting senator, not someone doing a parody routine of one. David Tafuri was a policy advisor to Barack Obama's presidential campaigns, and he joins us tonight. David, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So I don't want to. Chain migration has been used for 50 years as a term. The chain in the term chain migration is not a physical chain. There's no reference to any horrifying episode in American history like slavery is. That's insane. But the principle is an important one because 70% of all legal immigrants into this country come through chain migration, family reunification. I actually don't care what they call it. The principle is the same. We don't have any control over any of those people. We don't get to vet them. We don't get to choose them. They come because they're related to people who are already here. Why is that a good idea?
Well, of course, we do get to vet them. And actually, they have to apply, and they have to get a visa. And it takes 10 to 13 years for them to come here. So they don't come here automatically. But it's also important to note that the Trump proposal limits all chain migration. So you can't bring in any family members other than your spouse or your children.
And I misspoke, and I just want to, and you're absolutely right. We do get to vet them. We get to do our best to make sure they're not members of ISIS, though sometimes we fail in that. What I meant is, we don't get to choose them. We don't get to say, this is the most impressive possible person. The main criterion for admission is a blood relation already here. So it's not a good way to assemble a cast of all-stars. It's a good way to benefit immigrants, but maybe not the whole country. Do you see what I mean? And that's the majority of immigrants. So why is that a good way to do it? That's just a simple question.
Well, first of all, it is the way we have done it for a very long time. So, for instance, President Trump's mom... That's
not a real... I mean, wait, hold on.
Well, hold on a second.
We've done it for a long time.
We have done it that way for a long time.
Yeah, I know. We've done a lot of things for a long time.
Let me give you a very apropos example. President Trump's mom came from Scotland in 1930. She came here because her sister was here. Her sister sponsored her. So she came through chain migration.
I just fell asleep, and I can't track this conversation because it's so immaterial. Look, the point
it is material.
70% of our immigrants come this way. It's a really simple question. The question is not, have we done it a long time? Have people benefited from it? Do immigrants like it? I know the answer to all those things. Is it a good idea? Is that the best way to choose your immigrants, whether they happen to be related to somebody? Would you staff your company that way? Oh, you've got a cousin in Utica? He's hired. No one would do that. It's not the best way to do anything, right?
Well, it's not the only way people come here. So now you're suggesting it's the only way people come.
70% of all legal immigrants, 70%. It's the overwhelming majority come that way. So why wouldn't we reassess that? Because Kirsten Gillibrand, who's like pathetic, is like, you're a racist for, hush. Seriously, a real question, adult question. Is that a good idea?
Well, let's make this pragmatic, okay? President Trump's proposal is to limit chain migration just to spouses and children. Now, the Democrats have accepted that proposal with respect to the DACA participants, the people who are dreamers, who are going to get legal status in 10 to 12 years. And that is a compromise. The Republicans and President Trump are now saying they want to eliminate all chain migration. That might be too, but let me just finish. Yeah. That might be too overbroad. Let me give you an example. Let's say an engineer comes here from India. He comes to work for Google. He's a abiding citizen, law-abiding citizen. Yep. He's contributing to the economy, and he wants to bring his parents. Normally, under the current system, eventually, he could bring his parents. This would eliminate that. And we have to think about, is that really what we want to do? Do we want to eliminate all people who come here for potentially the type of people you're talking about, who come on merit-based reasons, from bringing in their parents or their family?
It kind of depends on that. Look, I understand why that would be a bad deal for the immigrants, but I think there's another party whose interests should be represented, and that's the rest of us. And I think the question is, it's a real question. And again, attempts by these members of Congress to shout it down using terms like racist isn't helpful. Does it help us? That should be a question too. It's not. Is the immigrant helped by it? Yeah, of course he is. He loves it. Why wouldn't he? I'm for that. I want to make him happy. But why should I be for it? That's the only question. You know what I mean?
Well, look, Democrats should not be calling it racist. Yeah. I don't agree that the term is racist. But let me also point out that if President Trump, if we didn't have chain migration, President Trump would not be here. So in that way, I guess I agree with you that chain migration has been harmful to America.
David, thank you. We'll ask about the FBI memo another time, but it is now time for Final Exam. Can you outperform our experts at recalling what just happened last week? Stay tuned. Time now for Final Exam, where we troll the hallways of Fox News to find the smartest people, bring them here for a titanic clash of news personalities. This week's two-time defending champion is Carly Shimkus, Fox News headline 24/7 reporter and contributor to Fox and Friends. Her challenger is the political editor of Town Hall and a Fox News contributor, Guy Benson. Smart people both and ferociously competitive. Are you ready?
Yeah. We're ready.
Okay, so you are the reigning champion.
Yes.
Guy has come in to dethrone you.
I'd like to cling on to that title.
Okay, good. Well, we'll see if you have the steely resolve necessary and the news knowledge.
Yes.
Okay, hands on buzzers. Here are the rules. You're familiar, but I'm just telling you just so there are no mistakes. I ask the questions. The first one to buzz in gets to answer. You have to wait till I finish asking the question before you do. Each correct answer is worth 1 point. Get it wrong, you lose a point. Best of 5 wins. Are you ready?
Ready.
Let's get started. The White House recently asked the Guggenheim to borrow a painting by Vincent van Gogh, the famous one-eared Dutch painter. The museum declined, instead offered President Trump which piece of so-called art? Carly.
A 18-karat gold toilet.
Don't believe you. That's too grotesque. We'll check the tape. See if you're right.
An 18-karat, fully functioning gold toilet. This work of art had been displayed in a public restroom at the Guggenheim, and it had been used by thousands of people.
That's unbelievable. How'd you know 18 karat? That's a level of specificity that we're not, we don't deal in that currency here on the show.
Gold toilet is impressive enough to know.
Thank you.
Very specific.
I appreciate that coming from Guy. He's a very
I thought
smart
it was
man.
a bidet, but whatever. But it was a toilet. Good call.
Tomato, tomato.
Question 2. This week, for the first time in 150 years, a blue moon, a supermoon, and a lunar eclipse occurred simultaneously on the same night. There is a name for this phenomenon. What is it? Guy Benson.
Is a super blue blood moon.
It's too weird. But let's see if you're right. To the tape.
You're looking at the super blue blood moon. It's the first time we've seen this in the U.S. in more than 150 years. And here's what it looks like right here above New York. That's cool. Really cool.
How'd you know that?
Because someone made the joke that I'm sort of blue-blooded, and so this is my moon.
Wow.
This speaks to you, too.
No.
I don't know.
I see a super blue blood moon rising kind of thing.
Yeah, CCR, little CCR.
Something like that.
Wow.
Question 3. This one is multiple choice.
Oh.
At 1 hour and 20 minutes, President Trump's State of the Union address was long, but it was not the longest in history. Which former president still holds that title? Is it Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, or Barack H. Obama? Guy Benson.
Bill Clinton.
You sure?
I think so.
Boy, no equivocating in your answers. Is it Bill Clinton?
The hour and 20-minute speech, the third longest State of the Union ever, behind 2 Bill Clinton speeches.
Oh, so he's got spots 1 and 2?
1 and 2, yeah.
Wow, that's Clintonian.
Very good.
I'm not surprised, actually.
Obama, I felt like.
Yeah, I know. He was a wordy character, but nobody beats Clinton in that category. 2-1. Question 4. One Democratic congresswoman is so offended by President Trump, she says a parental advisory ought to be aired before his speeches. Who is this congresswoman? Carlson.
Maxine Waters.
Maxine Waters of Los Angeles.
Yes.
Is it Maxine Waters?
This president, with his vulgarity and his disrespect for women and people of color, is a terrible role model for our children. Whenever he appears on TV, there should be a disclaimer that says, this may not be acceptable for children.
Yes.
Maxine
That's
Waters.
not extreme.
No.
No. Totally sane.
Cheered on a race ride, but that's not offensive. Okay, so are we 2-2? I think we are. Let me check with the judges. We are. They've confirmed that. It's 2-2.
Uh-oh.
This is the tiebreaker. Question 5.
Oh, my.
Final question. Palms are sweating. Okay, here it is. A video of a rat, the rodent, went viral this week because the rat was caught doing something pretty extraordinary. What was the rat doing? It was a rat was doing something extraordinary.
An actual.
This is going to be risky because I know I'd be docked a point, right, if I get it wrong.
You would. In fact, indeed, you would lose.
I would lose.
Uh-oh.
Yes, you would, but you've pressed
So
the
I have to
buzzer.
answer. There's something in the back of my mind that says that I read something about something to do with a cigarette. He had a cigarette. This is not Pizza Rat. This
No, Pizza Rat was years ago.
This might have been Cigarette Rat.
Was the rat smoking a cigarette? By the way, if a roll your own counts too, it doesn't matter. Any kind of cigarette, was the rat smoking?
It's really important that you're properly clean, especially if you're kind of hairy like this fella. Look at him preparing for his date. He's getting all the important spots. He's looking forward to it. He's been, he just got out of a bad marriage, and he just met somebody online, and it was just a mouse click away, he said. But now it's just he's been.
So,
cutest rat ever.
Not a dirty habit, but a clean habit.
Yes.
But bold. I thought you were saying he was like hitting the cocaine bar, but no.
I want to see the video of the rat smoking the cigarette.
I saw something. It might have been a joke based on that, but someone tweeted something about it.
It was a bold guess, but in the end, it did not pay off. It was the e-toys of this game.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Carly Shimkus, you remain for the 3rd week in a row.
My gosh.
It's unbelievable.
This is
and
fantastic.
again,
oh,
the coveted mouth-breathing mug.
my cupboards are full.
You're gonna give them to your friends. Thank you both very much. That was great.
Thank you so much.
Pay attention to the news each and every week. Tune in every Thursday to compete against our contestants. The show is far from over. Stay tuned. Introductory macroeconomics doesn't sound like an especially political college course. Usually it's not. But Professor Spencer Pack at Connecticut College decided that any discussion of economics would be incomplete without a large helping of his personal political views. In a syllabus, Pack included a, quote, trigger alert. Here's part of what it says. Quote, I'll try to present various competing economic theories as fairly as I can. However, I must admit I find conservative classical theories to be pretty inadequate in explaining the economic benefits of the past decade. Moreover, I think our current president is mentally ill, a pathological liar, and very dangerous, an aspiring dictator, a pathetic racist too. Students who are upset with my views may want to consider taking introductory macroeconomics from another professor. The problem isn't that kids might object to Pack's views, but rather that Pack would object to theirs and punish them for it. If you did disagree with Pack, would you really speak up in class? Probably not, after he dismissed your views as proto-fascist. We contacted Connecticut College for a statement and got the predictable boilerplate, quote, we value many different viewpoints, encourage respectful dialogue in the classroom, blah, 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 blah. They mean none of it. Who believes this crap? Nobody. We'll be right back. Kind of disappointed it's over. There's so much going on. Tomorrow could be a big news day for real if the anticipated FBI memo comes, as many members of Congress are predicting it. We'll be here, of course, live to cover it and interpret it and bring you new information on it. Tune in 8 o'clock show, Sworn Enemy, Lying, Pomposity, Smugness, and Groupthink. We're glad you stayed. Good night from Washington. Sean's right here.